Alright, so we have the big brain mode, which is my presentation name. We have chapter 1, that is the science of psychology. I, for obvious reasons, chose Sigmund Freud as my thing because he's the worst. Anyways, so we have psychodynamic, which is the unconscious conflict, parental issues, and sexual instinct. We have psychoanalysis, which is unlocking hidden feelings, thoughts by discussing previous memories, dreams, and thoughts from childhood. This is supposed to be my pointer. Anyways, I personally think that this form of therapy, so psychoanalysis, would be very good for someone who has BPD because most BPD triggers usually stem from childhood trauma, and having parents who have BPD put you at a higher risk of also having it. Another thing that I did was the scientific method: observe, hypothesis, test, conclusion, evaluate. My observation was my cat, Richard, cannot hear me. Richard, come here. This is Richard. Anyways, and something was blocking her ear canal, possibly ear mites. So for a while we were testing different sounds, and I would say something, and then my fiance would also say something, and we were just trying different sounds that involved like sensations. So like if we slammed the ground, she'd obviously be able to feel that we were slamming the ground, and that would cause her to turn around and look at us. But if it wasn't anything like loud clapping or stomping on the ground or anything like that, she couldn't really hear. The next thing was I inspected her ears, and I noticed while I was trying to clean them out that she had large, thick, gross stuff in her ears that was literally jammed into her ear canal. I did find Richard outside, so she probably did have ear mites. I took care of them. And so the conclusion was Richard did in fact have ear mites, and the evaluate, you should always check your kitten's ears for ear mites if they are having trouble hearing. Okay. So we have chapter 2, which is the brain and behavior, and I have two separate things here. The first one is how our body's sympathetic nervous system responds and protects our bodies. A good example of this would be what happens when we are submerged into freezing cold water. Our bodies can only survive in cold water for 3 minutes, and this is what's going to happen in those few minutes. Your heart rate is going to go up, your blood pressure is going to go up, and your breathing is going to get faster. So basically what your body is doing is, well, first it's sending a signal of panic to you because, it's trying to survive and it feels like, something bad's about to happen, which it is. But for the most part, if you can breathe through this part where everything is starting to rise in you, your heart rate's going really fast, everything in your body is telling you to panic. If you can manage to breathe through that and really just gather yourself, you will be more likely to escape the situation that you will be in. So like say you fell through the ice, if you can gather yourself and calm the panic, you'll be more likely to be able to escape. Because the thing that causes accidents like that to go towards death is usually people panicking. So you always want to remain calm even though your brain is giving you every other response. So, and then the next thing is, how do drugs affect the brain? I have a few different drugs here. We have morphine, which increases serotonin and adrenaline. And then we have sedatives, which increases the GABA in your body. And then we have amphetamines, which increases dopamine and also increases adrenaline. Cocaine blocks the reuptake of dopamine, serotonin, and pushes more into the system. And then I just have a little note over here that says a drug's effectiveness stems from its ability to manipulate the synaptic transmitters at different phases of the process. So, and all right. So for chapter 3, we have sensation and perception. I did the top down and bottom up. So top or bottom up is like when you listen to music or you're reading a book. This is you absorbing information, while top down is you recalling that information or remembering it. So these say lower level of cognition, info from senses, driven by senses, organizes info. Schema driven relies on knowledge and experience, high level of cognition, interpreting information. This is supported by this, or yeah, and you are actually experiencing this process as we speak. So, yeah. So, we have chapter 4, which is levels of consciousness. So my chart is not as good as I wanted it to be, but that's okay. So we have our levels of awareness. We have higher level, which involves controlled processing, the most alert. So making this poster, I feel like there was a lot of attention that I had to put towards making this poster. Okay, lower level is includes automatic processing, requires little attention, as well as daydreaming. So while I was making this poster, I was listening to a podcast, and I feel like that was kind of in the background. And when I was focusing very hard on the poster, that the sound of the podcast in the background kind of fades out, and it kind of just starts to sound like gibberish, because this is my main focus. This is where all of my attention is going. And then we have altered states of consciousness, which can be produced by drugs, trauma, fatigue. My pretty much all the time altered state of consciousness is, or awareness, is being hangry. I get very angry whenever I feel any sort of hunger. So, and then we have our subconscious. This is like when we're sleeping or daydreaming. I have very odd dreams about I'm always in an Ariana Grande music video. I don't know why that is a thing. I'm not a huge fan of Ariana Grande, but apparently my subconscious is. So, and then we have no awareness, which is unconscious thoughts that are too laden with anxiety and other negative emotions to admit them. And basically, I just put having unconscious thoughts, probably, things that have to do with fears, like me admitting why I'm afraid of the dark. So, I don't know why I'm afraid of the dark, but I bet you my subconscious does. Right? Here we have chapter 5, which is learning. We have plastic and operant learning. In operant learning, we have situation to behavior to consequence. If the consequence is reinforcement, the goal is the situation immediately leads to the behavior that they're trying to reinforce. Now, if the behavior leads to punishment, we're trying to stop the behavior with the punishment. So reinforcing or punishing stimulus is given after a behavior. Yes, subjects learn to associate two unrelated stimuli. So we have classic, which it goes situation, consequence, then behavior. And the goal is that the situation will immediately lead to the behavior and not the consequence. A signal is placed before a reflex. Pavlovian subject learns behavior by associating it with consequences. All right. So next we have chapter 6, which is about memory. I have a few different charts here. We have I don't remember what this exact chart was called, but it's a long-term memory systems, and then it breaks down to these, which is explicit memory and implicit memory. And in explicit memory, that breaks down to episodic memory. and semantic memory. And then this implicit memory breaks down to 3, which is procedural memory, priming, and classical conditioning. And then over here, so we have episodic and semantic, and this is facts, ideas, concepts. I said concepts twice. Less important, automatic, I know, education is relevant, intelligence is relevant, inadmissible in court, for legal testimony. And then for semantic, it's measured in events and episodes. Organization is time. Emotion is more important. Retrieval process is deliberate. Retrieval report is I remember. Education irrelevant. Intelligence irrelevant. Legal testimony admissible in court. And then I have these 2 definitions down here. Semantic memory is a person's knowledge about the world. Episodic memory is the retention of information about where, when, and what of life's happenings. Yep. Here we have chapter 7, that is about intelligence and language. We have Sternberg's theory of intelligence, and then we have multiple intelligence from Gardner. Sternberg's is analytical, creative, practical. Gardner's is verbal, mathematical, spatial, bodily, kinesthetic, musical, interpersonal, intrapersonal, naturalist, and existentialist. And for the basic language, we have phonology, morphology, syntax, semantics, and pragmatics. All right, and last but not least, we have child development, or developmental psychology. We have sensory motor stage. The infant constructs an understanding of the world by coordinating sensory experiences with physical action. A good example of this is when children, specifically infants, pick up objects and put them towards their mouth, because this allows them to touch, taste, feel, and smell all in one. And that is usually how infants start to learn about the world. This is pre-operational stage. The child starts to represent the world with words and images. So at this stage, the child is starting to kind of comprehend the world a little bit more than in the sensory motor stage. And then we have the concrete operational stage. The child can now logically reason about events and classify objects into different sets. So this is more of like, the child is now at a stage where they can really understand, what's going on around them, basically. And then the formal operational stage reasons in more abstract and idealistic ways, which I feel like is more of where an adult is at that stage. So, yep.